Morning light barely touched the treetops when Maggie O'Brien stepped onto the forest trail with her daughter Lucy and their loyal dog Rusty. The air carried that crisp mountain quiet where every sound felt amplified. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat. Maggie had walked this path hundreds of times since building her small cabin deep in the Oregon wilderness. But that morning the forest felt different, as if watching, as if waiting. Lucy wandered ahead, curiosity leading her like a compass only children understand. Suddenly Rusty froze, hackles raised, staring at the ground where moss gathered thick across the earth. Maggie knelt beside Lucy, brushing away layers of needles until iron glinted beneath. Two narrow rails emerged, old, rusted, forgotten, stretching in both directions like the spine of something ancient buried alive. Maggie felt a jolt in her chest, not of fear but recognition she couldn't explain. Lucy's small hands uncovered a tarnished brass locket resting directly on the rail, placed with clear intention rather than accident. Inside, a faded photograph revealed a woman who looked like Maggie reflected through time. Rose O'Brien, her grandmother. Nearby, hidden beneath a hollowed tree, lay a leather-bound ledger documenting a town Maggie had never heard of. Millbrook, 1947–1952. As Maggie read the names recorded in careful handwriting, she realized this wasn't just an abandoned place. It was the doorway to a part of her family's history she never knew existed. And now, standing in the forest's breathless silence, the rails seemed less like relics and more like an invitation. The deeper they followed the tracks, the more the forest changed, shifting from familiar ground into territory untouched by anyone in decades. Vines coiled across collapsed paths where houses once stood, and stone foundations marked the shape of a vanished town swallowed completely by time. Maggie paused where sunlight broke through the canopy and illuminated a wooden sign half buried in the earth, Millbrook Community Cemetery. Beyond it, rows of weathered markers leaned crookedly in the soil. Every grave bore the same month, March 1952, and the same terrible stillness. Families, children, workers, all gone within days. Lucy knelt at a grave that still held its markings, Rose O'Brien. Maggie's breath caught as she traced the name of the grandmother she barely knew. The ground felt heavy beneath her feet, as though the earth itself carried the memory of what happened here. Before she could speak, the underbrush rustled. Rusty growled low, his body tense. Footsteps approached from the tree line, measured, steady, unhurried. A man stepped into view, weathered and quiet, like someone shaped by the wilderness itself. "Mrs. O'Brien," he said, voice roughened by years. "I've been waiting to meet you." His name was Thomas Barrett, a retired investigative journalist who once worked with Rebecca O'Brien, Maggie's mother. He explained how Rebecca had uncovered a massive corporate cover-up involving Cascade Timber, a company responsible for poisoning Millbrook's water supply. 47 people died. And to bury the truth, the company erased the entire town from existence. Rebecca had tried to expose it, then vanished. The realization struck Maggie with cold clarity. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She'd been silenced. Tom led Maggie and Lucy back toward the tracks, speaking with the gravity of someone who had carried the truth alone for far too long. He told them where Rebecca's trail began. Old photos, coded journal entries, maps she had pieced together after discovering evidence that her own mother, Rose, died trying to stop the poisoning. Rebecca had followed the rails just as Maggie did now, searching for the missing pieces of Millbrook's story. But before she could publish her findings, she disappeared without explanation. Lucy walked beside Maggie, eyes thoughtful, studying the forest floor as though trying to listen to what the earth itself remembered. "Maybe she left clues," she said quietly, "like great-grandma did." Maggie looked at her daughter in surprise, then at the rusted iron line slicing through the woods. It wasn't random. None of it was. As they followed the tracks again, Lucy pointed to small stacks of stones placed at intervals where they seemed too deliberate to be natural. Cairns markers left by someone who wanted to guide a specific person. They followed the cairns up a steep ridge toward two towering stone formations known locally as the Twin Pillars. Behind them, camouflaged with moss and earth, stood a hidden cabin no one could have found unless they were meant to. Inside lay a typewriter, clothing, food supplies, and a manuscript titled Millbrook, the town that vanished, Rebecca's unfinished truth. Alongside it were sealed evidence packages labeled for major newspapers. Rebecca had nearly succeeded. She had prepared everything, and someone had stopped her. The quiet inside the cabin felt sacred, like stepping into a moment preserved by love and desperation. Maggie ran her fingers over Rebecca's typewriter where pages still sat mid-sentence, frozen in time. The manuscript detailed the timeline of disaster, chemical contamination, ignored warnings, cover-ups orchestrated by Cascade Timber, and the government offices that quietly helped bury the truth. It named names, dates, codes, everything needed to expose what had really happened to the people of Millbrook. And beneath the typewriter lay a final message addressed directly to Maggie. Rebecca's handwriting trembled across the page. "If you're reading this, they've found me. The evidence is yours. Tell the world what they did. I love you always." Maggie pressed the letter to her chest, grief and clarity twisting into something fierce. But before she could absorb the weight of her mother's words, distant engines echoed across the valley. Rusty bolted to the door, barking sharply. Headlights moved between the trees, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Tom grabbed Maggie's arm. "They must have sensors out here. They know someone found the cabin." Maggie's satellite phone buzzed. A text appeared. "We have what you're looking for. Bring the evidence. Come alone." Attached was a photograph that shattered the world around her. Rebecca, alive, older, bruised, holding a newspaper dated that very morning. 22 years gone. 22 years imprisoned. Maggie's entire past realigned in a single breath. Her mother never left her. She was taken. And now the people responsible wanted to finish what they started. Maggie looked at Lucy, then the evidence. She knew exactly what she had to do. Tom wasn't surprised. He'd been preparing for this moment since the day Rebecca first contacted him. He admitted he had already alerted the FBI's Environmental Crimes Division the second they found the manuscript. Agents were already moving into position across the ridge, closing in with quiet precision. Maggie listened, torn between terror and determination. "They want me to come alone," she whispered. "Then we give them exactly what they think they want," Tom replied. The plan was simple. Maggie would walk into Millbrook Cemetery with one evidence package, wired for audio and surrounded by federal agents hidden in the forest. Lucy would help Tom deliver the remaining packages to the FBI's staging point. The little girl nodded with the same bravery threaded through generations of O'Brien women. Maggie walked through the darkening woods toward the cemetery where everything had begun. Floodlights flashed through the trees. Black SUVs idled among the graves. Men with tactical gear lined the perimeter. A tall man in a pristine suit stepped forward, David Cromwell, head of Centurion Industries Security Division, and behind him, escorted like a prisoner of war, stood Rebecca, thin, trembling, but alive. Maggie felt her heart burst with emotion she had no words for. Cromwell extended his hand. "Give us the evidence and your family walks away unharmed." But Maggie knew better. She had seen what they considered protection, and what they called mercy. Instead of handing over the package, Maggie raised her voice with steady resolve. "You won't be needing it." Cromwell's brow lifted, confident in his power, unaware that his world had already begun to collapse. Maggie continued, "Everything you've said tonight has been broadcast. The FBI is listening. The press is listening. The world is listening." Cromwell's smirk faltered. Agents stepped out of the trees, weapons drawn, badges gleaming beneath the floodlights. Lucy and Tom appeared behind them with the remaining evidence, escorted by federal officers. Agent Sarah Martinez moved forward, voice sharp as steel. "David Cromwell, you are under arrest for kidnapping, extortion, and conspiracy." Panic flickered across Cromwell's face as he realized he'd underestimated the very family he tried to destroy. His security team was disarmed within seconds, wrists bound, power evaporating into the cold night air. Maggie ran to Rebecca, embracing her mother for the first time in 22 years. Rebecca trembled against her, whispering apologies that carried decades of longing. Maggie held her tighter. "You didn't abandon me. You saved me." Lucy joined them, wrapping her small arms around both women, binding 3 generations back together. The cemetery where lives ended now witnessed a reunion that defied everything Centurion fought to erase. And as agents secured the final evidence, Maggie realized her family had reclaimed ownership of a truth buried too long. 6 months later, Millbrook was no longer a forgotten wound on a forgotten mountain. It had become a national memorial, restored with federal funding, and visited by thousands wanting to learn the truth they were never meant to hear. Granite markers replaced broken wooden crosses. The old rails were preserved as a historical path telling the story of the 47 lives lost to corporate greed. Centurion. Industries fell under the weight of federal charges, congressional investigations, and civil lawsuits. Executives who once hid behind power now stood trial for crimes they believed would remain buried forever. Rebecca slowly learned how to live beyond survival. She moved into a small cabin near Maggie and Lucy, where daily life grew steady again, meals shared, stories exchanged, silence healed. Tom Barrett's documentary about Millbrook earned national praise, transforming the tragedy into a catalyst for accountability. One evening, as the mountains settled into twilight, Lucy asked Maggie the question that started everything. "Are you still angry?" Maggie breathed deeply, watching her mother tend a garden near Rose's restored grave. "No," she said, "I'm grateful. The truth gave us back everything we lost." Lucy leaned against her, understanding more than her years allowed. In that moment, Maggie realized their journey had become more than justice. It had become healing. Where the forest once tried to bury Millbrook's story, it now echoed with footsteps of those who came to honor it. Maggie, Lucy, and Rebecca walked the restored tracks together, following the same path that once nearly destroyed their family. Now it felt like a road carrying them toward something whole. The rails no longer whispered warnings. They carried the weight of truth reclaimed. Maggie watched her daughter run ahead, her laughter bright against the quiet woods. Rebecca walked beside her, older and fragile, yet finally free. Maggie felt a peace she had never known unfold inside her, the understanding that her lineage wasn't defined by disappearance but by endurance. The O'Brien women had fought across 3 generations to bring light to a place built on silence, and in doing so, they had rewritten the ending. The mountains around them felt protective, a witness to their rebuilding, a reminder that some places hold stories until the right hands come to claim them. When Maggie looked at her daughter and mother walking together, she understood the true treasure hidden in these woods. Their family had not been broken, it had been waiting. And now, walking the rails that once carried tragedy, they carried something stronger. Legacy, justice, and the unshakable belief that truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way home.